All right, the creation of Africa Credit Rating Agency is part of conversations at the ongoing African Development Bank Group annual meetings in Abidjan. The coordinator of United Nations Development Programs, Jide Okeke, was discussing on the panel, tagged the strategic role of the African capital markets and the Africa Credit Rating Agency. They're asking Africans to be intentional in working out the plan for the agency.
It is less about trying to challenge the credit rating agencies through arbitrary criticisms, but more about trying to build the capacity and capabilities of countries and government to be able to negotiate and have a frank conversation with credit rating agencies. I think this is the approach that we think is excellent. We think that it is going to, over time, it's not going to be immediate, it's going to be incremental. Over time, it is going to alter the methodology. And as we think about the establishment of the African Credit Rating Agency, I think UNDP would like to work very closely with the African Union to ensure that we are not just, it's not about radically transforming the methodology, but it's also about building the capacities of our countries.
And now to our first conversation. As the Economic Community of West African States, as ECOWAS, commemorates its 50th anniversary, stands at a pivotal juncture in its pursuit of regional trade and economic integration. Established in 1975, ECOWAS has aimed to foster economic cooperation and integration among its member states. Over the past 5 decades, the bloc has made strides in promoting intra-regional trade, harmonizing tariffs, and developing infrastructure projects like the West African Power Pool and the proposed ECOWAS Railway Network. Well, let's discuss more now with Fidel Owusu, who's the CEO of DefSec Analytics Africa Limited. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So, let's, assess some progress now with the trading bloc. How effective would you say the ECOWAS bloc has been in achieving its goals of, regional trade, economic integration, over the past 50 years?
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. Firstly, I would like to say that before ECOWAS was created, and even before the independence of the individual countries in the 1950s and 1960s, groups in the region, the various kingdoms and states like Dahomey, Benin State, the Asante State, the Mali states, the Songhai Empire, and all those political entities had existed and had traded among themselves for so many years. In fact, salt and gold used to be taken from West Africa all the way across the Mediterranean to Southern Europe. And so the region has been a hub of economic activities for centuries. However, the creation of ECOWAS was actually part of the general African Union or Organization of African Unity goal of decentralizing integration so that the various regions like East Africa, Southern Africa, Northern Africa, Central Africa, and West Africa could have their own regional economic communities in order to facilitate continental integration at the local levels. And in that respect, I would say that ECOWAS has tried its best because, well, there's a natural tendency for the people to trade among themselves. That is one. And two, because of the creation of the organization, it has increased trade amongst African countries. In fact, the usual tariffs and the usual barriers are relatively better than between non-ECOWAS countries and other ECOWAS countries. So it means that if one wanted to move goods from Accra to Lagos, despite all the challenges on the way, it is relatively better than it would have been without ECOWAS. So we will talk only in relativity and not in absolute terms. And in that respect, I think ECOWAS has done the best it could.
All right, the best it could. I guess that's a good place to start there. But let's look at the macroeconomic overview of the bloc there. We see total GDP there about $508 billion. We see GDP per capita, population of around 441.3 million, about that. Then debt to GDP ratio about 61.13%. So let's look at unity at this time. What would you say are the implications of member states withdrawing from ECOWAS on the bloc's economic integration agenda? Because we see what the data is showing there. Maybe we might see reductions, from that.
Yeah. So the figures are impressive. Fortunately for ECOWAS, the largest country in terms of population is a member state, that is Nigeria. Nigeria, for some time now, has been part of the top 3 economies on the continent. That is also a plus to ECOWAS. Then we have other economies like Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, following in that order, the next 3 biggest economies among the 15 member bloc group of countries. And if you look at that critically, you realize that Nigeria has a chunk of this percentage. And it has the largest economy with growing manufacturing capacity. Other countries like Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire are doing well, but Nigeria is far ahead. And I think that I've always maintained that if you have a block of that nature, you need the stronger economies to create the vortex, that's the economic space, for others to follow. Because sometimes we can all pretend that we are all equal, that Togo is equal to Nigeria. Yes, these are 2 sovereign states. So in terms of sovereignty, you can claim that equality. But in terms of the substance, in terms of the economy, in terms of who can call the shot and who can put or marshal resources, there's no way you can compare Togo with Nigeria. Despite the common history and all of them being African states, Nigeria is far ahead. Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Senegal, these are the 3 main economies. And I think that if these 2 countries, these 4 countries, are able to take the lead, they can create the vortex for the others to follow, so that the whole region gets better per capita income, better human development index. And that is also very important. When we see the figures, you see per capita income, the highest being about $4,000, but we still have Niger, the poorest. Niger, Sierra Leone are among the poorest in the region. What are we doing about it? The fact that you see a higher per capita income does not mean that people are really getting those incomes. It means GDP over population. And that is, an accepted way of measuring how well an economy is doing. But when it comes to the real terms, you need to implement socio-economic programs that really reach the people. The news before this particular interview, where Nigeria, the Lagos state government is, doling out money or giving support to families that are into abject poverty. These are some of the things that we have to look at in order to lift the whole population alongside. Other than that, the growing youth unemployment and the increasing population would mean a disaster in the future. But currently, the pace is good, and if we keep it up and we double up by implementing good policies that create jobs for the people, I think that is the way to go.
All right, so looking at the bigger economies, the bloc, do you think they're doing enough, when it comes to their interactions with international, most of the, top economies in the world, like the US and the UK? Do you think their trade structure is well set up to, bring the kind of development we want to see in the whole bloc? Are they doing enough? That's the bigger economies, so that we can see that trickle-down effect to the smaller economies, and also the vulnerable within those so-called big economies.
Okay, so amongst ourselves, we are trying our best, but between ECOWAS and the rest of the world, much needs to be done. In fact, in 2024, the best 5 or among the best 5 producing or largest producing countries in terms of gold production in Africa, 3 of them were in West Africa. And we're talking about Ghana, Mali, and Burkina Faso. These are amongst the top 5 on the continent, and 3 are in West Africa. Now, what does it mean? Are we able to come together to say that, well, we are major gold producers, so we should negotiate But then there has been some good news around where what we call resource nationalism, where countries are now resorting to value addition instead of taking the gold in raw form to external our trading partners. We have decided to set up gold smelters and refineries. That should be refineries to add value to the gold before they are sent out. Some countries are also increasing the taxes that they get from these mining contracts, because before some of the taxes are quite ridiculous. You realize 10% and other things. Now many countries are increasing it. And the result has been mixed, because in Mali, for instance, it has been more adversarial with external investors. That has also drawn the condemnation of external trading partners. But in Ghana, that has been smooth. Ghana recently set up a gold board, and the gold board is supposed to be the authority to buy all the gold produced locally. That is in the informal sector. And in fact, since then, the country's currency has been strengthening, which is very positive for the country. And in the past weeks, Ghana's currency has been the strongest in the world against the dollar. And these are some of the reasons. So I believe that in terms of the trading partners between West Africa and the rest of the world, it has not been too bad. But then recently, when Mr. Trump took over in Washington and imposed the taxes, it sounded like the US, especially being the largest economy in the world, is in a more, should I say, adversarial, or more of a tariff-oriented. It's taking a tariff-oriented route towards trade. And that is not also going to be very good, because countries that are resource producers, like West African countries, Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and others, are also going to be more defensive and also trade with countries that they feel will have good tariff agreement with them than those who will just unilaterally impose those taxes, which, by the way, the US courts are saying are illegal.
Yeah, we see the U.S. courts weighing there on the tariff matter, and we see investors, kind of excited with the reactions we've seen in the market. But, you did mention currencies, in the bloc, and I'm wondering, in your opinion, which currencies in the bloc do you think have potential to, strengthen more against the U.S. dollar, going forward?
Yeah, so currently the Ghana cedi seems to be on a rise, and it's so astronomical. It's doing so phenomenal. But if talk of potential, every country has the potential. As long as we are resource producers and we can try to husband the resources and do well to invest in our domestic economies, we are likely to help with the strengthening of our local currencies. But most importantly, ECOWAS has been too slow in achieving the common currency status. I've always said that when the EU, the Rome Treaty that gave it to the EU, was being signed, African Union had already been conceived. The Organization of African Unity had already been conceived. And people like Kwame Nkrumah were talking about a single currency, a single economy, a common market, and all that. Even before the EU was established, but now the EU has a common currency. And because of the collective effort by the member states, the currency is doing well, even well than the dollar, as we have seen for a long time. But currently in West Africa, we've been, facing challenges with achieving that kind of a common currency. I think that with this question, it comes the importance of achieving the common currency that is the best route towards a common market. And when that is done, we can collectively strengthen our currency and trade, and the trade between and among countries is going to be at the optimal level.
Talking about the ECO and that, single currency plan, who do you think is holding, among the countries is holding the ECOWAS back from actually, getting that ECO, on the road?
Yeah. So firstly, it has to do with the threshold, where before countries can be accepted to be qualified to join the ECO, you should have some level of inflation that is not disturbing. Your GDP should be significant, and that everyone is almost qualified. But in terms of the macroeconomic and the fiscal policies, you shouldn't have so much deficit because the countries don't want to start this kind of the usage of one currency with a burden. You don't come with a burden when you come to use it. So there's a threshold, and countries have been achieving it and be slugging and achieving and slugging, and so others have been sluggish in terms of trying to achieve this. However, what I think is that, as I've mentioned, the stronger economies can start, and the smaller ones may follow. That's what happened in the European Union. It wasn't an overnight thing. It started with Benelux, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. And these are smaller economies. Even they started with the smaller ones, and the bigger ones joined. Currently, Germany, France, and Italy are the three biggest, and they lead the way. So people should not shy away from that. Nigeria is by far the largest economy. We should grant it that respect for it to take the lead, followed by Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Senegal. And when this is done, others will be more disciplined to follow. But where the bigger ones are not taking things so seriously is a problem. Then there's another issue where those using the CFA are more reluctant to join the rest of ECOWAS. That is also another issue. And then there's another argument where people are saying that the Anglophones should start a common currency of their own before the CFA and the Anglophone currency can be merged. So there are different schools of thought, and much of what we want to achieve to really have the common currency, in fact, has been slow, and there is no unanimity in this. And I think that it's about time we took it more seriously, because then it will help with integration and help grow the collective economies of the region.
All right, I guess at this point, we'll start planning for the next 50 years for the bloc. But thank you for helping us unpack this. This was Fidel Wosu, the CEO of DefSec Analytics Africa Limited, helping us unpack what to expect in the next coming years and how to strengthen the ECOWAS. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, sir.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll head straight to the markets. That's in a moment. Just stay with us.